Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a story that, well, until very recently, it couldn't fully be told, not even to a jury.
That's right. Imagine a crucial piece of a complex puzzle just deliberately hidden.
Exactly. And its absence really shaped public understanding, only for it to be unveiled right at the 11th hour. It's an intriguing, maybe even unsettling premise we're about to explore.
It really is an extraordinary scenario.
Yeah.
Especially within our justice system. I mean, the whole idea that pursuing a fair trial meant keeping critical information under wraps.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And now that this information is out, it genuinely shifts the whole perspective on these interconnected events. It gives us a rare glimpse into that delicate balance the courts have to strike.
And it immediately begs the question for all of us. How can justice truly be served when circumstances like these are in play? At the heart of it all is Adam Drake, a man now serving 2 life sentences. And here's where it gets really compelling.
The fact that one conviction was kept secret during the trial for the other.
Yes. The jury was intentionally completely unaware. It's a legal tightrope walk, to say the least.
It's a crucial observation that really sets the stage for everything. This wasn't just some, routine legal move.
Yeah.
Having a publication ban lifted as the jury is sequestered, that's exceptionally rare.
It really speaks to how seriously they take the idea of a fair trial, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A profound commitment to the purity of that trial, even if it meant creating a blind spot for the very people deciding Drake's fate in the second case.
This kind of judicial gymnastics, as you put it, really highlights how paramount that right to an impartial jury remains, even if it costs immediate public transparency.
Exactly.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unravel this whole intricate story, these 2 distinct cases where Drake was the accused, the 2022 passing of battle rapper Pat Stay,
The very public figure.
and the 2016 shooting that claimed the life of Tyler Kaiser. We're going to meticulously piece together the timelines, look at the evidence that shaped these outcomes, analyze those unique judicial decisions, the secrecy.
And crucially, the impact. The profound and lasting impact these events had on the victims' families.
Our goal is to give you, our listener, a comprehensive understanding, to let you see the full picture, a picture that, as we said, the juries themselves were intentionally prevented from seeing.
And understanding this complete context is really vital for grasping the nuances of justice in these intertwined stories and recognizing the implications of these legal decisions.
Okay, so with that intriguing backdrop of concealed information, let's start with the more recent case, the Pat Stay conviction.
Which just concluded.
Right. Pat Stay. He was a vibrant 36-year-old battle rapper, a father of 2, widely known, charismatic public persona, formidable presence in that scene.
Yeah, a big name in that world.
His passing, September 4, 2022, was very public, very tragic. It sent shockwaves through his community and honestly beyond. He met his end after being stabbed at the Yacht Club Social, a downtown Halifax nightclub.
So not hidden away, right in a public space.
Exactly. It drew significant attention locally and even internationally.
And when we look at the Pat Stay case, the evidence and the process, what stands out is the timeline and the reliance on a specific kind of proof.
The trial itself took about a month, right? Started May 12, 2025.
Correct. A month-long affair.
Yeah.
And the core of the prosecution's case really hinged heavily on one critical piece of evidence: grainy black and white surveillance video from inside the club.
Grainy black and white. Let's really picture what that means for a jury. What did it actually show?
Okay, so the video showed Pat Stay. His back is to the camera initially, and he's involved in some kind of altercation with another person.
Right.
Then he turns, and this must have been incredibly difficult to watch. He's seen wiping what looked like traces from his chest.
Oh, wow.
He's then punched, he falls, manages to get back up, and then stumbles out of the camera's view. He's come to his injuries shortly after in hospital. That was the central visual evidence.
And the Crown's argument, based purely on this video, how did they build that?
It was essentially a process of meticulous elimination. They tracked and analyzed the movements of everyone near the color, Stay at that exact moment.
Okay.
And by doing that, they argued that Adam Drake was the only person whose movements aligned with inflicting that fatal wound. It was very precise, almost forensic, tracking sequential movements in that footage.
Trying to leave no reasonable doubt, despite the video quality.
Exactly. Despite the low quality.
What about the defense? Drake's lawyer. They pushed back hard on that.
Oh, absolutely. They urged the jury to just disregard the video.
Yeah.
They argued its quality was simply insufficient for a conviction.
Basically saying you can't base a life sentence on shadows and maybe.
Pretty much. There's too much room for doubt here.
So for our listeners, how tough is it usually for a prosecution to build a case mainly on grainy video like that? What are the hurdles?
It's inherently challenging. Massively so. The defense can easily argue, multiple interpretations, point out obscured angles, blind spots, suggest it doesn't show the full context. The usual hurdles are identification. Can you really be sure who is who? The exact nature of the interaction. And crucially, does the video truly show the causal event beyond a reasonable doubt?
So the fact the Crown leans so heavily on it, what does that tell us?
It suggests a very high degree of confidence in their analysis, in that meticulous elimination theory. They must have felt that the video, maybe combined with other subtle inferences, did isolate Drake.
Implying they'd maybe exhausted other avenues.
Possibly. Or they just believed this visual proof, however imperfect, was compelling enough when you put all the movements together.
So after nearly a month of trial focusing on that difficult footage, the verdict came down June 18th, 2025.
And quickly. The 12-person jury deliberated for less than a day.
Less than a day. Wow. And they found Adam Drake guilty of second-degree murder. That speed after such a long trial is striking, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It speaks volumes about how compelling the Crown's case, particularly that video analysis, must have been for the jury in the end.
And the reactions in the courtroom.
They tell us even more about the gravity of that moment, especially for Pat Stay's family. His spouse, Melissa Burns, she described it as the longest 5 weeks of her life.
I can only imagine.
She expressed overwhelming shock, relief, feeling Pat could be at peace now. Reports said her family gasped, cried openly, a huge release of tension and grief.
And Drake's reaction?
Immediate defiance. He shook his head, turned right to Stay's family.
To the family.
And said, "Sorry, you guys, but they got it wrong. You don't got justice."
Wow. Turning to the family and saying that, what does a reaction like that signify, especially given his pattern?
Well, that kind of immediate public defiance. It could be several things. Maybe a genuine, perhaps self-deluded belief in his innocence. Or it could be performative, a refusal to concede defeat, a challenge to the court's authority. Regardless, it underscores a profound disconnect between him and the justice system's findings.
Leaving the victim's family with no sense of remorse or acknowledgement from him. Okay, sentencing. Second-degree murder. Automatic life sentence. Justice Scott Norton determines parole ineligibility, anywhere from 10 to 25 years.
And significantly, the majority of the jury recommended the full 25 years before he could even apply for parole.
That's a strong recommendation.
It's a clear, powerful signal from the community, through the jury, about the perceived severity of the crime and the desire for maximum accountability. It's not binding on the judge, but it carries weight.
Okay, now this brings us to that really unique, almost unbelievable part of this whole saga, the Tyler Kaiser case, and why its outcome was kept completely secret during the Pat Stay trial.
This is really the critical constraint, the thing that makes this narrative so distinct. The jury in the Pat Stay trial was deliberately kept in the dark about a prior, equally significant conviction against Adam Drake.
Not an oversight, a deliberate legal order.
Exactly. A publication ban, specifically designed to protect Drake's right to a fair trial in the Stay case. The concern was that knowing about another murder conviction would just undeniably prejudice the jury.
Making it impossible for them to judge the Stay case solely on its evidence.
Correct. You couldn't unring that bell, so to speak.
So this entire other murder conviction under a legal gag order until the very last moment.
The ban was only lifted June 17, 2025, just as the Pat Stay jury began deliberations and was sequestered, locked away from outside influence.
That's when the public, including you, our listener, finally got to learn the full scope of Drake's legal history.
It's a stark illustration of the huge weight placed on the principle of a fair trial, even if it means a jury operates with, well, incomplete information about the accused's past.
A legal paradox, really, prioritizing procedure over complete context.
It underlines the judiciary's commitment to ensuring no prior prejudice taints a verdict, even if it creates this kind of information lag for the public.
Okay, let's dive into the Tyler Kaiser case itself. Tyler Kaiser, just 22 years old. He lost his life November 21st, 2016, 10:46 p.m.
Shot in a Halifax parking lot, corner of Gladingen and Falkland Streets.
And the really tragic detail, he was in his rented SUV with his girlfriend in the passenger seat. She witnessed the whole thing.
Horrifying. And Similar to the stay case, there was crucial visual evidence.
Another video.
Yes, from an adjacent building. Captured the event unfolding. Again, black and white.
What did this one show?
It showed a man, dark clothes, gloves, hood up, approach Kaiser's vehicle, fired 3 shots through the windshield at the driver.
Then moved to the side?
Moved to the driver's side, fired one more shot as Kaiser tried to get out, and then fled. Kaiser's girlfriend, physically unharmed, observed the shooter was a white man.
What's really astonishing here is the initial investigation and then the Crown pulling back.
Yeah, that's a major twist. Drake was arrested March 2019, nearly 28 months after Kaiser passed away, charged with first-degree murder.
That's a long delay itself.
It is. But then, October 2021, literally days before the trial set to start, the Crown withdrew the charge.
Withdrew it. Why?
Their stated reason was no realistic prospect of conviction.
Wow. So what does that usually signal? When the Crown says no realistic prospect, especially in cases linked to organized crime.
It usually means the evidence, for whatever reason, isn't strong enough to meet that high bar proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, especially to a jury.
Challenges specific to organized crime cases.
Definitely magnify it. Witnesses get intimidated, they might disappear. Evidence can be hard to link directly because of all the layers involved. Motives can be complex, hard to prove without direct testimony.
So it speaks to the limits of even strong circumstantial evidence sometimes.
It does. If you lack that direct evidence, especially from cooperative witnesses, it can be tough. It was a huge twist, left the Kaiser family without immediate justice, and really set the stage for what came later.
And here's where those timelines really collide. The Kaiser charge was reactivated October 2022.
Crucially, shortly after Drake was accused in Pat Stay's death.
Right. That refiling meant a whole separate legal process kicked off for the Kaiser case, which eventually led to that publication ban we talked about.
And the trial for Kaiser's passing began April 2024. Justice Timothy Gabriel presiding, but importantly, judge alone, no jury.
Ah, judge alone. That makes maintaining the ban easier, perhaps?
Exactly. Without a jury to potentially influence, the judge could know all the facts, including the other ongoing case, and still protect Drake's fair trial rights in the stay case. Shows the system's flexibility, even if it creates that temporary information gap for the public.
Okay, now the key witness in the Kaiser case. Morgan Too Hot Harrington. Controversial is putting it mildly.
Extremely. His testimony was central, absolute pivotal to getting Drake's conviction in the Kaiser case. But his background, described as a career criminal, lengthy history, drugs, violence, it immediately flags his testimony.
Credibility issues right off the bat.
Massive credibility issues. And Justice Gabriel knew it, he was acutely aware, and addressed it head on.
So what was Harrington's story?
He identified Drake as the gunman, claimed they were both living at the same halfway house at the time. Harrington said Kaiser was worried about retribution. Apparently, for a prison beating and stabbing back in 2013, Donald Arsenal was the victim. Kaiser and another inmate were allegedly ordered to carry it out.
A prison hit.
Seems so. Harrington claimed he spoke to both Drake and Arsenal about this. Drake supposedly denied involvement. Arsenal said he wouldn't retaliate, but also wouldn't shake Kaiser's hand. Sort of ambiguous.
And Harrington told Kaiser this?
Yes. Related to Kaiser, who, according to Harrington, seemed reassured. Thought the matter was settled.
Then the night of the shooting, what did Harrington say happened?
He described Drake showing up at the halfway house unexpectedly on November 21st, 2016. Acting unusually gave him a fist bump instead of their usual half hug. A small detail, but Harrington highlighted it.
Odd behavior.
Drake supposedly called Harrington over to talk about a small cannabis debt. But then Kaiser drives into the parking lot.
And Harrington realized.
He said he suddenly understood Drake's real purpose. Allegedly told him, "Adam, you don't have to do this," then turned away just as the shots were fired. He painted himself as a shocked bystander.
Right, but the deal for his testimony, that's crucial here.
Absolutely critical. This is a huge nugget of knowledge. Harrington was initially arrested for breaching release conditions connected to the shooting, but he didn't identify Drake then.
Not initially.
No. He only agreed to implicate Drake in early 2019. And this was after he was facing serious charges himself from a Halifax drug bust. Cocaine, heroin.
So he was in trouble himself.
Big trouble. Those charges, plus others he faced in Quebec and New Brunswick, were all dropped in exchange for his cooperation against Drake.
All dropped, plus financial help.
Yes, financial assistance from police, and he was eligible for a $150,000 reward if Drake got convicted.
$150,000, that's a massive incentive.
Huge. It puts anyone's motivation under intense scrutiny.
And the judge, Justice Gabriel, he saw this clearly.
Oh, yes. He was acutely aware of Harrington's compromised credibility. He explicitly described him as unsavory, dishonest, and extremely violent. He noted the benefits Harrington received, the potential reward money.
He even said it would be dangerous to convict just based on Harrington's word.
He did. Stated explicitly, it would be dangerous to convict upon the unconfirmed evidence of this witness. That's a stark warning from a judge.
So how did Drake get convicted then, if the judge had such reservations?
Despite those warnings, despite the reservations about Harrington's character, Justice Gabriel ultimately found Harrington's testimony truthful on the key points. Why?
Why?
Because it was corroborated by at least 27 other pieces of evidence.
27? Like what?
Things like cell phone data placing Drake near the scene around the time of the shooting, and the security video of the shooting itself, which matched elements of Harrington's account.
Ah, so independent evidence backed up the core story.
Exactly. It highlights that complex balancing act in court. You have to be skeptical of a compromised witness, but when your story aligns with a significant amount of independent, objective evidence, that carries weight.
So the sheer volume of supporting evidence overcame the credibility issues.
That's how Justice Gabriel saw it.
And the guilty verdict in the Kaiser case came down October 2024.
Yes. Justice Gabriel was satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that Adam Drake deliberately shot and killed Tyler Kaiser. Called it an execution-style first-degree murder.
The courtroom reaction.
Intense. The packed gallery apparently erupted in applause and cheers, a huge release for Kaiser's supporters, obviously.
And Drake's reaction this time?
Just as volatile as in the state trial, if not more so. Very public, very immediate. He told the gallery, "At least I'm going home someday."
Provocative.
Prompted an angry reply. "Not today." He kept interjecting, "I'm innocent. You believed a criminal liar. I know who did this."
Refused to stop.
Refused to stop speaking, even when cautioned. He was escorted out yelling, "Karma's a bitch. I never did it." And then swore at the judge.
And even to his own lawyer.
Turned to his lawyer and said, "I'm convicted for a crime I didn't do. How would you feel?" Just chilling outbursts, no remorse, no acceptance.
And the sentence for this first-degree conviction?
Mandatory life in prison. No chance of parole for 25 years. Imposed December 18th, 2024.
And an appeal was filed immediately.
Defense lawyer announced it right away. Drake himself filed a handwritten notice, claiming the judge made several errors.
Like what?
Dismissing his application for a stay of proceedings, basically arguing the case took too long or was an abusive process. He also argued the judge shouldn't have admitted evidence of group motive, assessed evidence incorrectly, and reached an unreasonable verdict.
So the legal battles aren't over. An appeal is pending.
Still pending. Next appearance scheduled for August 13th.
Okay, that group motive argument Drake is appealing. Can you explain that a bit more? What does that mean legally in a case like this?
Sure. Group motive is really relevant in cases involving organized crime or these deep-seated feuds, like the Marriott Melvin one we'll touch on. It means the prosecution doesn't necessarily have to prove Drake had a personal reason to target Kaiser.
Okay.
Instead, they argue the act was committed to, say, advance the interests of, or maybe as retaliation on behalf of, a larger criminal group he was associated with.
How do they prove that?
Typically, the Crown presents evidence showing the existence of these rival groups, the history of their conflict, the defendant's ties to one group, and how this specific crime fits into that bigger picture, that ongoing feud.
So Drake's appeal is basically saying, you can't pin this on me just because of who I might associate with.
Essentially, yes. He's challenging whether that broader context was legitimately applied to his individual actions, arguing it might have unfairly prejudiced the judge against him.
This brings us to, well, maybe the toughest part of this deep dive. The human cost. The victim impact statements from Tyler Kaiser's family.
They're incredibly powerful and heartbreaking. Lisa Kravis, Taylor's mother. She spoke about the promise she made to her son as he lay lifeless in the hospital, vowing she'd get justice for him.
Oh, devastating.
She described the unbearable image of watching him pass away. The trauma led to a diagnosis of complex PTSD. Daily crying, memory loss, panic attacks, this overwhelming need to protect her other children and grandchildren.
8 years she fought.
8 relentless years. She expressed immense gratitude for those who fought with her. It consumed her life. Her words just paint such a vivid picture of enduring grief, the debilitating effects of violent loss.
She said he did not deserve to die.
A sentiment echoed by all the families touched by this kind of violence. The emotional, the physical toll is just unfathomable. It shows how one act ripples through an entire family forever.
Tyler's sister, Kristen Kravis, her statement was incredibly raw, hoping Drake never feels happy again.
Yeah, reflecting that harsh reality. While Drake might technically come home someday, he'll never be the same person, and he can never have the time back. Tick-tock.
But she also pushed back against maybe negative perceptions of her brother.
She did, saying Drake didn't kill a monster, he killed a king, and that Tyler had died a healed person, acknowledging he'd made mistakes, paid for them, but was maybe turning things around.
Trying to reclaim his narrative.
Exactly. Offering a glimpse into his efforts, emphasizing the tragedy of a life cut short, just as it was perhaps finding a new path.
But even with the conviction, she said she'll always have to look over my shoulder.
That's chilling, isn't it? That lasting trauma. The persistent fear that just permeates life afterwards. It highlights the psychological impact that extends far beyond the courtroom.
Tyler's stepmother, April Kaiser, echoed that idea of him changing, coming out of prison with a whole new outlook, so many hopes and dreams.
Full support of his family, the love of his life. She emphasized how those few seconds forever changed our lives, took away futures, left this physical ache, a wound that will never heal.
These statements together, they show the depth of the loss, don't they?
Absolutely. The devastating ripple effect. It's not just one life ended, it profoundly alters so many others. Leaves a void that can never truly be filled.
And another sister, Justine Curry. She talked about the horror of repeatedly watching that shooting video.
Seeing countless things that no family should ever have, to see images and crime scene photos that will likely haunt my thoughts forever. Just awful.
She highlighted his qualities: confident, empathetic, selfless, respected, honest, and loyal, his love for family, and her vow. Justice for Tyler will never be over. We will never be done fighting.
It's incredibly powerful. Their collective voice, the raw grief, the determination, it underscores the immense personal stakes behind the legal arguments. For them, justice isn't just a verdict, it's this continuous ongoing fight. Reminds us these aren't just cases, they're about real people, lives irrevocably changed.
So let's connect those intersecting timelines again, because this is where it gets really haunting. That potential what if.
The sequence is key.
The Crown withdrew the Kaiser murder charge in October 2021. Pat Stay was killed in September 2022. Then the Kaiser charge was relayed in October 2022 after Stay's passing.
And this sequence creates that profound, chilling implication for you, the listener, to really consider.
If Adam Drake had remained charged in the Kaiser case, or even more critically, if he'd been convicted earlier and was incarcerated,
would Pat Stay still be alive? It's an unanswerable question, of course. But it weighs heavily. It speaks to the potential consequences, the unforeseen ripple effects of legal delays or decisions, the butterfly effect of judicial outcomes.
a stark reminder of how decisions, or even just the passage of time within the justice system, can have tragic consequences down the line. And to really understand the deeper currents in the Kaiser case, especially that group motive argument Drake is appealing, we need to touch on that family feud backdrop.
Right. This provides crucial context. It refers to this long-running, deeply entrenched feud between two rival crime families in Halifax, the Marriotts and the Melvins.
Spanning decades.
Decades and generations. Primarily rooted in controlling the city's drug trade. It's not just isolated incidents, it's this pervasive, almost generational conflict shaping the criminal landscape there.
And the connections in the Kaiser case are direct.
Very direct.
Yeah.
Tyler Kaiser and the witness Morgan Harrington were tied to the Marriott family. Donald Arsenault, the victim of that 2013 prison beating that allegedly sparked the retaliation, he was connected to the Melvins.
So the feud provides the group motive, the prosecution argued. Kaiser's death wasn't random, it was part of this larger conflict.
Exactly, a retaliatory act within the brutal dynamics of this underworld.
And this feud has a violent history.
A long and often shocking history. Think back to November 2008, that brazen shooting outside the IWK Children's Hospital.
A children's hospital.
Yes. The intended target, Jason Hallett, had ties to the Melvins. The sheer audacity, it sends shockwaves. Aaron Marriott and Sean Smith later pleaded guilty to related charges. Then, early 2009, Terry Marriott Jr., a high-profile Marriott family member, met his end, a major escalation.
And the justice system has tried to intervene by taking key players off the board.
They have. Jimmy Melvin Jr., a prominent figure, declared a dangerous offender in 2021, locked up indefinitely.
That dangerous offender tag.
Yeah.
It's one of Canada's most severe measures, right? What does it actually entail?
It is. It's reserved for individuals whose past violent behavior shows a persistent pattern, a high likelihood of reoffending. It's not just a sentence. It's a legal finding allowing for indefinite incarceration, subject to review, but potentially lifelong.
Extremely rare, then.
Exceptionally rare. It highlights the state's view of their ongoing significant threat. And more recently, Brian James B.J. Marriott got the same designation March 2024 after a vicious jail assault. So key figures effectively sidelined.
What's really relevant to the Kaiser case, though, is how this feud didn't stop at the prison gates.
No, it extended right inside. That 2013 prison beating of Donald Arsenal by Kaiser and another inmate, supposedly on orders from higher-ups in their side of the gang culture.
That directly influenced the motive for Kaiser's killing, according to the Crown.
Correct. It shows how deep and far-reaching these rivalries are. They transcend walls. Seemingly isolated prison violence can be part of this much larger, grim tapestry, a self-perpetuating cycle of violence and retribution.
And looking at Adam Drake's broader history, the picture gets even more complex, more troubling.
He's also a suspect in other unsolved cases. Not charged, but suspected. For instance, the 2012 homicide of John Newcomb, 27, shot outside a Halifax pub.
And Newcomb's mother believes Drake was involved.
Laura Lee Jennings. She's been steadfast in her belief, so much so that she attended both the Kaiser and Stay trials, a persistent fight for answers.
Any others?
His name has also surfaced in the investigation into Ryan James Jessup's disappearance in 2020. Again, these are allegations, ongoing investigations, but it paints a picture of someone consistently on law enforcement's radar for very serious crimes.
A pattern of suspicion.
Definitely.
And it's not just current investigations. Back in 2013, he faced 11 charges, including attempted murder from a bar shooting.
Right. But those charges were withdrawn in March 2014. Why? The victim, Brandon Anderson, refused to cooperate with police.
What does that signify? When charges get dropped because the victim won't cooperate, especially in violent crimes.
It highlights a huge, frustrating challenge in prosecuting these types of crimes. Witness cooperation is absolutely paramount. Without it, even strong cases can just collapse.
Why wouldn't they cooperate?
Fear of retaliation is a big one. Distrust of the system, maybe allegiance to a different code, street code. This inability to get testimony can effectively shield perpetrators, letting them evade justice even when police strongly suspect them. It fuels the very cycles of violence we're talking about.
And even during the Pat Stay trial, there were issues related to the Kaiser conviction, weren't there? The defense trying to ban people.
Yes, Drake's defense team tried to ban certain individuals from the courtroom. They alleged these people had violated the publication ban about the Kaiser conviction.
Which led to a special process for jury selection.
Exactly. Challenge for cause, questioning for prospective jurors in the Stay trial.
How does that challenge for cause work? Why was it so critical here?
It goes beyond standard jury selection. It lets lawyers question potential jurors individually under oath, specifically probing for any prior knowledge that might compromise their impartiality. Like, did they know about the Kaiser case? Did they know about the feud?
A mini trial within jury selection.
Essentially, yes. Trying to prove a potential juror is biased and should be excluded. In this unique situation, with that prior conviction under a strict ban, it was absolutely essential to ensure the Stay jury was entirely untainted, to preserve Drake's right to an impartial jury at all costs.
So, wrapping this all up, reflecting on justice, secrecy, the echoes of violence, we've unraveled these intricate stories of Adam Drake's 2 life sentences for the deaths of Pat Stay and Tyler Kaiser.
We've seen the sheer complexity, that unprecedented publication ban, the controversial witness in the Kaiser case.
And it really brings us back to that fundamental paradox in the legal system, doesn't it?
That inherent tension. Protecting the accused's right to a fair trial, even if it means hiding relevant information, versus the victim's family's desperate need for transparency, for swift justice. It's such a difficult balancing act.
How do you think that balance impacts how people perceive justice? Not just the families, but the wider community. Does withholding information, even for good legal reasons, erode trust?
It's a really important question. Trust hinges on transparency, but fairness also demands certain protections. When the reasons for secrecy eventually come out, like here, it's a chance for the public to grasp the complexities. But it can also leave this lingering unease, right? Questions about what else might remain unseen.
And beyond the courts, the legal arguments, we've seen those unseen ripple effects. The trauma, the fear, especially tied to these long-standing feuds. Tyler Kaiser's family spoke so powerfully about that.
Kristen Kravis saying she'll always have to look over my shoulder. That's a stark reminder. What does it mean for communities when violence creates that climate of constant vigilance, constant fear? It's a societal wound that doesn't just heal with a verdict.
No, it festers. It demands we look deeper. And as we've seen, the past casts such a long shadow. Events from years ago, inside prison walls even, culminating in devastating outcomes later, connecting seemingly separate acts of violence into one chilling narrative.
It's deeply interconnected.
So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. What responsibility do we as a society have to understand these deeper currents? The feuds, the histories, the cycles of violence simmering beneath the surface. Do we need to grapple with those underlying causes to truly address crime, maybe even prevent future tragedies?
It's a question that definitely warrants more thought long after this deep dive concludes. How do we break those cycles?